Chapter 5 The False Prince. Sometime during the night, I tried to roll over in my blanket. A tug on my ankle awoke me, and I sat up to find myself chained to Mott, who was sleeping beside me. I grabbed a pebble and flung it at Mott's face. His eyes flew open, and he sat up, glaring at me. "What?" he snarled. "You chained me up," I said. "Not the others, only me." "The others won't run. You might." Mott lay back down. "Go to sleep, or I'll knock you out cold." "I've got to go." "Go where?" "To go." "I'd have you taken care of myself, but it looks like you want to come along." Mott cursed. "Wait for morning." "Wish I could. I've been cursed with my mother's pea-sized bladder." Mott sat up again, fumbled on the ground for his keys to the chain, then unlocked himself. He grabbed his sword and directed me to stand, then escorted me over to the cold ground to some bushes a little ways from camp. "Go here." I did my business, then we walked back to camp. Mott grabbed the collar of my shirt and shoved me back onto my blanket. "You ever wake me in the night again, and I'll hurt you." "As long as you have me chained up, prepare for waking up a lot in the night," I said. "I'm not a quiet sleeper." He replaced the chain, tightening it. I noticed from what it had been before. I stretched and yawned and rolled over, pulling my chain leg as far forward as I could. Mott yanked it back. Even though I knew I'd pay for it the next day, I couldn't help but grin as I pulled my leg forward again. Surprisingly, that morning Mott made no mention of the previous night. I got a kick awake, but so did Roden. Tobias was walking around, so he must have been awake already, and smirked a little to see Roden and me groan in our blankets. Roden seemed to have recovered from the shock of Latimer's murder last night, or at least he was back to his old self, assuring Tobias and me, as we cleaned up, that he intended to be the boy Connor chose. Tobias and I glanced at each other. Tobias's expression was clear. He intended to win too, only he clearly planned on pursuing that goal more quietly than Roden. "I have bread for breakfast," Connor announced, a mouthful for any boy who correctly answered my question. He broke off a piece of bread and asked, "Who are the current king and queen of Carthia?" "Egbert and Corrine," I said quickly. Tobias laughed. "King Egbert is correct, but the queen is Erin." Connor tossed the bread to Tobias, which I thought was unfair. I'd already given him half the answer, yet he got the entire bite. Connor broke off another piece, then asked, "How many regents sit in King Egbert's court?" Tobias guessed 10, but Connor said that was incorrect. Neither Roden nor I answered. "The correct answer is 20, Connor said. "No matter how many nobles of wealth or stature exist in the land, there are always 20 regents given a seat in the court. They advise the king, although Egbert too often ignores his regents." He popped the bread into his mouth, then took another piece while he chewed. After swallowing, he asked, "How many sons does King Egbert have?" "Two," I answered. "Wrong again," Tobias said. "There is one, the Crown Prince Darius." There were two until 4 years ago when the younger son, Prince Jaron, was lost during a sea voyage. Connor tossed the bread to Tobias and then said to me, "Your accent is avian, so you're not originally from Carthia. What brought you from Avenia to Carthia?" "That orphanage was the farthest away I could get from my family," I said. "Are your parents still alive?" he asked. "I have not sought out any information on them for some time," I said. "As far as I know, I'm completely alone in this world." "Avinia is a violent country," Connor said. "If disease doesn't strike, bandits will. Few live too old in that Avinia." "Consider me an orphan," I said. "An orphan of family and of country. Is loyalty to Carthia a requirement for you?" Connor nodded. "It's a must. It will take you more effort to learn facts about this country, which Roden and Tobias have grown up knowing. Are you up to learning?" I shrugged. "Tell me about the regents." Connor renewed my question with a chunk of bread, and then said, "I am one of 20 regents, albeit a minor one. My father was a man of great influence in the court, so upon his recent death I inherited my position in the court. 13 of the regents inherited their position. The other 7 earned them through great acts of service to the king. 3 of the regents are women. 2 are old men whose sons can't wait for them to die to take their place. For every regent in the court there are 5 nobles in Carthia who would love to see them fall from grace so that another Carthian can be brought into the council with the king. All the regents claim loyalty to the king, but few actually practice it. The secret none of them keep very well is that they wish to have the throne for themselves. Does that include you? Gordon's question was not rewarded with bread. Connor pressed his lips together and then said, as I told you, my status in the court is minor. It's useless for me to aspire to the throne. It would be taken over 100 times before I attained even power to acquire it. He didn't ask whether you'd get the throne, I said. He asked whether you wanted it. Connor smiled. Is there anyone who bows to the throne and does not wish that he or she was the one who sat in it? Tell me, Sage, have you ever lain on a hard floor of the orphanage, staring at the stars through cracks in the ceiling and wondered what it would be like to be king? I couldn't deny it. Beside me, Roden and Tobias were nodding their heads, and a few moments at night, before sleep came upon us, when all the orphans do their best dreaming, we'd all thought about it. Connor continued his lesson. Second in power to the king is the High Chamberlain, Lord Kerwin. But Kerwin is a servant to the king and could not become king himself. The most powerful of the regents is the prime regent, a man named Xanthias Valdegrath. He's ruthless in his ambitions. He's climbed the ladder of power by destroying those with influence greater than his. I suspect there are more than a dozen nobles either dead or in the king's prison because of Valdegrath. He wants the crown and works the king's armies in his favor. If anything were ever to happen to the royal family, Valdegrath would be the first to reach for the throne. The other regions would either bow to his will or send Carthia into a civil war in the pursuit of their own ambitions. I know of Valdegrath, Tobias said. He owned the land my grandmother lived on. One day a messenger came round and told her the rent would be doubled. She hated him to the end of her life. He has his enemies, yes, but he also has powerful friends. Valdegrath has no compassion for the people and will suck every good thing from Carthia to himself until it's swallowed up. So which do you prefer? Tobias asked. A reign of Valdegrath or civil war? Neither. That is why you are here. Connor tossed the remaining bread to the ground for us to divide among ourselves, then brushed his hands together and said to Mott and Cregan, wipe away any trace of our being here as best you can. I wish to leave within the hour. Roden and Tobias dove for the bread, but I stayed where I was, watching Connor walk back to the cart. The hints he left for us about his plan were not subtle. It was clear what he wanted, but there was no obvious it was so obvious, some crucial information he was still leaving out. I didn't dare wonder what that might be. Connor met my gaze as he passed by and stopped walking. He gave me an appraising look as we stood there, then slowly nodded his head before walking on. I closed my eyes, horrified that my suspicions might be true. Connor was holding us on the brink of treason.